where is Bitcoin going from here? I don't know, but at any given point, at any point in the future, it's going to be vastly more probable that Bitcoin becomes more valuable in the future in terms of inferior energy. Using guns to defend the numerical system that we call money is ancient technology. It's archaic. It's devastating, and it's sad that we have to build memorials of all the people that have given their lives to defend this system. And obviously we will always need a military. That's not my point. But my point is that the best way that we can honor our veterans, that we can honor the men and women that serve our country and that serve all the militaries of the world, the best way we can honor them is to reduce the probability for war, to reduce the need for war, and reduce the need to have a barrel of a gun defend our jar of honey. Bitcoin is the most respectful and the most honorable thing we can do for our veterans, and saying that we appreciate your sacrifice, and we are going to build an innovation that does not require sacrifices similar to yours in the future as much as we possibly can. When I'm filming this here in 2023, 3 years ago, the United States of America surpassed a 130% debt to GDP level. Now, this has happened many times before. In fact, in the last 225 years, this has happened dozens and dozens and dozens of times. 98% of the nations or empires or states that surpass this debt level, 130% debt to GDP, end in one of two states within 15 years. Either hyperinflation or war. Okay? So for the U.S.'s example, we hit that level in 2020. 15 years from 2020 is 2035. Historically speaking, I'm not predicting this, historically speaking, there's a 98% chance that by 2035 we either end in hyperinflation or war. I'm talking about the United States here. There are many other nations across the planet, Singapore, Italy, Japan, on and on and on. There are many nations hitting this point simultaneously. In my opinion, that's because this is the first time we've had a global rise in productivity in the late 20th century, and this first global period of a global reserve currency, the post-World War II era. Before World War I and World War II was the British pound, which was much more localized, and today the world's much more global than it's ever been. And so we have a cascading problem here. We have more countries than ever, with more bigger guns than ever, that simultaneously are racing towards this path that we know there's only those two destinations, either default or hyperinflation or war. And so the reason I talk about Bitcoin, the reason I do this, is because of that belief. Yes, you should consider buying Bitcoin to protect yourself against hyperinflation. But frankly, I hope that we have hyperinflation, because the only other result, the only other probable outcome is war. If you think of bees, there are only two outcomes here. Either you listen to the colors and the pheromones that the bees are emitting and their non-kinetic projection of power, or you disregard that. And that's when the stingers come out. And that's where we're racing to here. The world has spent many decades atop of these forms of numbers, these forms of political currencies, the U.S. being the dominant one by far. And that's starting to change. Because as we create more numbers, we dump those numbers onto the rest of the world. We acquire their resources to bring back to us. In the same way that the French dumped their franc, they dumped their number, they inflate and debase their numbers onto the Africans and extort the Africans' energy. The same thing's true with America, onto Latin America, onto Europe, onto China, onto the rest of the world. We dump our numbers onto the rest of the world. We make their money worth a little less, so that when we trade with them, we get a little disproportionate benefit. And this makes our guns have more energy behind them. It makes it stronger. It's a positive feedback loop in favor of America at the expense of the rest of the world. And this is not, again, an American issue. This is just a technological failure. This is a technological inevitability. That the centralization of power, the centralization of that honeypot requires further and further extraction. So the two end results there, again, being, number one, the rest of the world no longer wants our numbers. Or, number two, there's nothing left to steal, which then the guns come out. That's hyperinflation or war. Either the rest of the world will stop accepting our numerical system, in which case then there's hyperinflation, or the second probability is they revolt, there's revolution, there's violence, and the numerical system that we call money defaults to its baseline system: raw brute force energy, war, guns, bullets. Those are the only two outcomes. And so if you want to help the veterans, if you want to help the people that serve this country, and you want to reduce the probability of conflict in the future, I highly recommend that you buy Bitcoin, you accelerate Bitcoin's adoption, and you help other people understand this. If you're a young person like me, and you have been on that receiving end of the debased currency units, you have been defunded, you've been defrauded. It is very difficult for people my age to afford houses these days. College is increasingly difficult because the prices of everything keep going up and up and up forever, perpetually. This is because, as we debase more dollars, we force the asset prices of everything up, because we cannot allow prices to come down in terms of our political currency units. So if you're a young person watching this and you want to be able to afford things in your future, I highly recommend that you begin learning about Bitcoin, the superior form of storing monetary energy in the future. And if you're older, you're looking to retire, you're retired, I highly encourage, likewise, you begin learning about Bitcoin, because if by 2035 history says there's a 98% chance that our bonds, that the U.S., and that our currency is either going to result in hyperinflation or war, that's something really to keep in mind. Now, I'm an optimist. I don't think the U.S. has a 98% chance of hyperinflation. That's not what I'm kidding. That's not what I'm claiming. I think we probably have 10x better odds. So maybe instead of a 2% chance of surviving, maybe we have more of like a 20% chance. So I'm an optimist. But still, one way or another, history says, the math says, demographics show, in every way we are checking every box of a late-stage monetary empire. America will be fine. America will be fine. But the numerical system at which we use to communicate energy will not be fine. And as that cycle unfolds, as that transition occurs, my fear is that we resort to those. Because that is the big risk. That is the big problem. America, the country, will be fine. The world economy will be fine. But the currency we use to communicate with the rest of the world will not be fine. We've seen this numerous times before in history. We've seen this with countless examples. The empire can survive just fine, but the money could die. The credit could reset. Everyone would have to start over. So my proposition is that Bitcoin is this kind of decentralized nation, you can think of it, that has this massive electrical cross behind it that defends the scarcity of its currency units. And this is why you see Bitcoin increasing rapidly in purchasing power in terms of the US dollar. And there is no top to that. Bitcoin will not stop at 100,000 US dollars per coin. It will not stop at 500,000 US dollars per coin. It will not stop at $1 million. It will not stop at 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, even 300 million, eventually billions and trillions. There is no end to the failure of the US dollar as a monetary technological system. And there is only, so far, looking to be a brighter and brighter future for the monetary system that we call Bitcoin. And so in the same way that you would not store your energy in Lebanese pounds when the dollar exists, I would encourage you to stop or to slow the rate of you saving your monetary energy in the form of dollars and increase the rate of your savings in terms of Bitcoin. For you, for your kids, for your retirees, for your veterans, for your environment, for your economy, ultimately, for the world. Because I'm very concerned that if we don't stop that, we are going to have this. World War I and World War II were escalated, heightened, and accelerated from the result of debasement of fiat currency. Before hyperinflation, Weimar Republic in Germany in the 1920s, the Nazi Party had a 2% vote in their election. And then after hyperinflation, after the banks failed, property owners, predominantly Jews, were targeted, and eventually the Nazi Party became incredibly popular. We've seen the same thing hundreds of other times in history, and I'm afraid that we have the same thing here today. The only difference we have with history is that our stingers, our guns, are orders of magnitude larger than any other conflict we've had in the past. So please, for you, for the sake of others, for the sake of your loved ones, I would highly encourage you, consider buying Bitcoin.